I mean, I guess you can see out the back window.
Commission for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023 to order. Dave, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tedesco, Commissioner Volpe, Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Walewski, alternate Commissioner Cairn,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Coviello,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Coles,
Present.
alternate Commissioner Ma, Commissioner Santiago,
Here.
Vice Chair Salka,
Here.
Chair Emerson.
Hammersley's here. I did hear from Commissioners Tedesco, Volpe, and Walewski. None of them will be here tonight. We will sit the three alternates to my right. Everyone else is left. Coles, Keard, and Coviello. And with that, we have a roll. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll remain standing for a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting on March 21, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Coles, with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On to item number 7, Commissioner discussion, any subcommittee reports? Peter?
Yes, so commissioner members should have gotten yet another set of draft regulations. This time it was definitions. Just remind everyone that we pay attention to the margins, because in the margins is where either a comment has been made or an explanation or that kind of thing. With that, more will be forthcoming. If anyone has input thus far, happy to solicit any info or comment or what we have, and we'll be meeting certainly on a regular basis to go through everything. So it should be, there's not a lot left. I think the big pieces have been done so far. You will notice, though, within the table-driven format, as well as the definitions, have a lot more pictures, explanations, and things like that. So hopefully it's becoming clearer and clearer, but there are indeed comments in there or questions for the commission. And just a reminder that we don't have to do any of the things that is there, but it is beyond the scope of a subcommittee to make those calls. And so in the margins, would the commission like to take up what have you, either now or at a later date? So.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anyone else? Jen?
I just have a question. So what, for the rollout of this?
Yeah.
Will there be a public summary?
Oh, yeah.
Presentation? Okay.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that. We haven't talked about it in detail, but absolutely. I think one of the times we met, we talked about maybe a couple public information sessions to kind of explain things, as well as, of course, anytime you have any change to a regulation, you must have a public hearing by law anyway. So that has to be, but we thought maybe a couple information sessions to kind of precede that, to say what we have. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Absolutely, sure.
Good job.
Anything else? Any other commissions or subcommittee reports? None? All right. Let's move into item number 8, our public hearings. Item A, DRA Architects, site plan application to construct a new library building and demolition of the existing library, property located at 255, 269, 281, 289 Main Street in a CB zone, SPR 1863. As you're coming up, I'm just going to read a preamble, which I've been reminded again to do. I don't know why I had it right here.
I know.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Southington Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Robert Hammersley. I'm the chair of the commission, and I'd like to take a few moments to explain the meeting format. Aside from administrative items, tonight's meeting is comprised of 2 parts, a public hearing and a committee meeting, or a business meeting, rather. During the public hearing, applicants will present their application to the commission in detail, which will allow the commission members and the public the opportunity to better understand what is being proposed. The commission members may ask questions during the presentation if needed. Then we will ask members of the public who support or oppose the application to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by myself. Once recognized, come forward to the podium, which is right there. State your name and address for the record, And please address all comments directly to myself and not to the applicant or other members of the public. Be advised, this is your opportunity to ask questions and make comments on the application, because once a public hearing is closed, no additional testimony from the public or the applicant will be permitted. It's important to maintain order and decorum at all times during the meeting. After everyone has had a full opportunity to speak, all questions have been answered, and all information has been received, the commission will decide whether it's appropriate to close the public hearing. We will not consider voting on the application until the business meeting. During the business meeting, the commission will, deliberate on the application submitted to the commission and decide how to act on them. The commission may take one of four different steps. 1, approve the application as submitted. 2, approve it with stipulations, conditions, or modifications. 3, table it for a future meeting, or in some cases, we may deny the application. 4 affirmative votes of the commission are generally required to approve any application. If you have to leave before the decision is rendered, please contact Dave LaValle, sitting all the way to my left, your right, at the end there tomorrow, and he can answer any questions you might have on any decisions that were made. So with that, again, we open up the public hearing on 8A. Mr. Champagne.
Good evening, Commissioners, town staff. I have the pleasure tonight.
Name and
Oh,
address,
excuse
please.
me. Name and address?
Yes, please.
Paul Champagne, 62 Russell Road, Millvale, Connecticut. I have the pleasure tonight to introduce the architect and his team. And we also have Whiting Turner here, the construction team. We brought 10 people, so we equal you tonight. So we hope we have enough. Again, let me start off introducing a representative from SLR, and they'll start the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is David Dixon. I'm a principal landscape architect with the firm of SLR International Corporation. Our offices are at 99 Realty Drive in Cheshire, Connecticut. With me tonight is Todd Ritchie, civil engineer. And when I am completed my portion of the presentation, I'll turn it over to Todd. The aerial photo that you have in front of you identifies the subject lot. We've got a 3.3 total acres. There's actually 4 separate lots. These lots will be combined as a single lot in the very near future. So the total area is 3.3 acres. This is in the central business zone. You can see the zone circles around the subject property. North is straight up on the plan. Main Street to the west is to your left, Meriden Avenue to the north, and then residential areas, houses to your east and also to your south. This drawing indicates zoning or setback lines for the zone, shown in dash red. The existing library is shown, it's justified completely in the northern quadrant of this parcel of land. There are 2 existing curb cuts into the property, one on Main Street, and let me see if I can, one on Main Street in here, another one off of Meriden Avenue in this location. You'll see that we have done everything we can to maintain those 2 curb cuts, minimize any impacts on traffic, avoiding DOT concern or review on this project, and of course the parking count helps that as well. The topography on the site is relatively level. It's about 3 to 4% across the entire site, although there is a relatively steep hillside right in here. That is a vegetated hillside. It's like 2 to 1 side slopes, and the subsoils are very sandy. So any disturbance of that we're trying to minimize. We do have to go into that hillside with a retaining wall, but only as far in as we need to go. There's an existing evergreen buffer or screen right up in here adjacent to this residential house, and there is nothing along the southern property line. You'll see what we have done in our proposed layout to address some of those same conditions. This aerial photo shows the proposed layout of the new library The curb cut maintains here, the curb cut on Meriden maintained here. A southern parking lot, a northern parking lot, they're roughly equivalent to each other. Then a connector drive in here. This is two-way, and this little bump out in here is a one-way drive that allows for book drop-off, and there's a window that Jim will address on the architecture and how that actually functions. The plans have been reviewed by all municipal bodies, including police, fire, and we've had good interaction with the staff relative to engineering and planning on this project. And I believe that we have satisfied the majority of those issues. Did want to mention that the Darrenowski School is located right here, and the hospital for Central Connecticut is up here on the hillside as well. So we get into the proposed site plan, the layout. The existing building is here. The proposed building is centrally located in here. We still end up with a north parking lot and a southern parking lot. One of the things of interest is that in the original aerial, with the existing building in this corner, this quadrant, the distance from the existing building to the south property line and to the furthest parking is almost 400 feet. So it's a pretty substantial run between those two locations. The distribution of parking is now much more evenly distributed. As we said, we reuse those curb cuts. We had one way in and out, one way in and out. The circulation is designed to be intuitive and maintain that easy movement between parking lots in here. This will be a very slow-moving traffic in here. And let me just touch on the grading here as well. The existing grading in this lot actually lays out almost identical to the existing parking lot, and that was done for a reason. We wanted to match the existing grades in here, and we wanted to minimize the amount of overwork and earthwork that had to be done. So this effort was required a redesign on our part. I think the benefit to the project is immense. We really minimized earthwork here as well as over in here. So these grades in here are almost precisely the same grades that exist in the existing parking lots. Excuse me. So I mentioned that we had to go into this hillside a little bit. So there will be a retaining wall in here. It's a modular block wall. It's approximately 10 feet high. That's at its highest point. It kind of starts low over here, ramps up to about 10 feet here in the middle, and then back down to 2 or 3 feet on the far end. Total number of parking spaces is 92. We've got down in the south, we have 45, and to the north, we have 47 to the north, 45 to the south, for a total of 92. Todd will address parking in a little bit more detail momentarily. There are 5 handicap parking spaces, 3 here and 2 here. There are 3 EV charging stations, or 4, excuse me, right here. Of the entire site is ADA accessible. No slopes exceed 5% with the exception of some of the access points to the building itself. So we have an access point here off of Route 10, off of Main Street. There is a switchback ramp here. That's an 8% ramp for 30 feet at 8%. There's also a run of stairs, of course, here next to it. Same thing here on the south. So the building is up a little bit higher than the existing parking lot. There's a run of stairs, and there's also a switchback ramp. There is a ramp here to get you up to this terrace location, and a set of stairs to make the connection up to the parking lot. Access to the terrace area from the north or from the east is through this location over in here. There is a children's learning center, outdoor reading and activity center here. It's about 600 square feet. It's a benched type of arrangement where the kids can actually sit up, get elevated a little bit. There will be a complete safety fence, security fence around the entire facility. There is there's a proposed door that can only be accessed from inside the building, of course, and there is a locked gate in this location. There will be a push bar, a panic bar to allow the children to get out in the event of an emergency. There's also a wonderful feature here, this terrace area in here. This is about 2,000 square feet. When Jim discusses some of the architecture, we're going to talk about what this space here at the northern portion of the building, how that can function for community gatherings and special gatherings. You can get a fair amount of people in this space. There is a low 18-inch high seat wall, masonry seat wall around the outside with a flagpole in the middle. Then this area, this lawn spills out. This is about 8,000 square feet of lawn. This is all basically 2 to 3%. So this is very level in here. So events could spill out to here in this area if need be. There's also a kind of a welcoming gateway feature in here at the corner at the intersection. There will be a curved seat wall, 18 to 20 inches high on both the right and left side, and then right in the middle, that wall will bump out to about a height of 4 feet. This will be where the future sign for the facility is located. There will be accent lights on that wall. There will be additional low, colorful plantings in this area as well. There will be, in the future, there will need to be a sign permit that we'll have to come back for when that time comes. There are a few things that Jim would tell you are part of our bid alternates to make sure that the overall project comes in under budget, and a few of those things include this type of a feature in here. In terms of landscaping, we have a nice diverse blend of deciduous, evergreen, and ornamental plantings. We have a lot of color in here. These are low perennials, flowers, and grasses, ornamental grasses in here. And also along the east side over here. There is a 6-foot screen fence along the southern property line, and we're showing a rather dense planting of arborvitae in there. We've also taken this existing evergreen screen here and supplanted that with some additional evergreens as well. At this point, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'd like to turn it over to Todd Ritchie.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Todd Ritchie. I'm a principal civil engineer with SLR Consulting. I'm also a licensed professional engineer and board-certified environmental engineer. Pardon my voice, it's hoarse. I'm recovering from some illness. So I just want to go over the zoning criteria, as Dave had alluded to earlier. Just kind of run through that and then talk about some parking analysis that we did. The minimum lot area required is, I guess I forgot my glasses, 8,000 square feet, and we provided 143,270 square feet. The width is 50, and we are greater than 50. The front setback is 10 feet, and we are at 10 feet. And I can show you where that point is that we are at 10 feet is actually a distinct point on the building that's right, architectural feature line that's right here. That point that sticks out right there is where the 10-foot is. So the building is actually itself, the mass of the buildings is a little further back than that, in fact. There's no side setback requirement. Rear setback requirement is 40 feet, and we have the closest point is 101.4 feet. max structure height is 4 stories or 55 feet, and the proposed is 29.3 feet. Accessible parking spaces is, requirement is 4, we're providing 5. Total parking spaces currently is 173, and we're providing 92. So just a little history on that. Obviously, that's a sizable reduction of parking, but that's mainly because the parking lot was oversized to begin with. I guess the history with parking at the library has been that originally the parking lot in the vicinity of the library, if I can get back to this, in this portion, original library construction was deemed to be overcrowded at some point in time, and I think it was in the 2012 period where this parking lot here was added for the benefit of the library and likely, town municipal parking, and so it was maximized for the available space provided. In this case, as Dave mentioned, there's not a lot of option to construct a new building and keep the existing building functional. It is obviously ideal to keep the existing building functional so that the transfer of materials from that building can occur once the new building is constructed and completed. And the new building can actually come perhaps into use prior to the demolishing of the existing building. Because we have broken this project into 2 phases, and I'll speak to that in a moment after I'm done with the parking discussion. So back to the other slide. So to get an idea of what, we started with maybe not enough parking for the original parking lot. Now there's excess parking, and that's clearly visible. If you ever drive by, and we did do some drive-bys in any time of the day, there's a distinct break between 2 areas of the site. The very south has cars parked there that obviously people aren't walking to the library from, unless they want to get a lot of exercise. And then to the north, there's cars clustered around the library building as it is. And typically there's a cluster of about, I think on average about 12 or a good dozen cars in the south part of the lot, and then it varies at the north as well. So there's use of the lot right now, overflow from Darrenowski School to their benefit, which is great. But that may be something that just needs to be addressed program-wise in the future, because it will certainly impact that southern parking lot as it will be. Based on parking rates that are in requirements or guidelines, Institute of Transportation Engineers, the minimum parking required for ITE is 57 spaces, and that's based on 2.35 spaces per 1,000 gross square footage of the building. We did up here, it shows like a summary of the stop-by analysis that we did like 3 times a day for a period of time between March 16th and March 27th. And you could see that we kind of broke it off to the north and the south. We have an average and a peak, and you could see the totals combined on this side over here. So looking at just the totals combined, I just want to give you an idea of what the breakdown is between the two. Is the combined average is between 23 and 33 cars per day, and in the combined lot right now of 173 spaces, and the combined peak is between 41 and 49. So it's less than 50 cars a day in a parking lot of 173 spaces. So the existing peak observed was 49 spaces, and that includes 35 to the north, which is the library vicinity, and 14 to the south, which would be assumed to be associated with Darrenowski or some other use that's maybe using as a park and ride or something like that. Phase one, we're proposing the library, and I'll show you the phasing plan. So we have two phases. Phase one is is fencing off the library area, the new library construction area itself, and maintaining the existing library is open, and this parking lot in service for patrons. It requires one handicap space to be added, which just requires a restriping next to the, in this over here, to have two spaces. So we'll implement that. And with that, we have, for phase one, 43 spaces. As I mentioned before, the peak observed for just the north, which would be assumed to be closely associated with what's going on at the library, was 35 spaces to the north. So it's below the spaces we're providing, with also temporarily, but also considering, it is a construction temporary situation. So there may be some impacts to parking during that time. Now for phase two is completion of the new library building. And then you have a fence-in area around this portion of the site, which includes the existing library and this parking lot area, where the demolition will occur for this building and the completion of this parking lot area. During that scenario, we will have this parking lot will be completed, and assuming that everything goes well, and if they were able to open before, and maybe that's not even the case, we may not even need this open yet. But if for some reason this building needed to get open, or there needed to be parking in this area, even for build-out contractors or anything like that, the spaces that would be completed here would be 45 spaces. So again, it's half, as Dave said, half and half between the two areas. The final completed parking, as mentioned, was 92 spaces, and this is 60% beyond the ITE minimum requirement still, even though it is a reduction from the overall 173. So just the final statement on this, library parking lot demand can be further eased by restricting use of library parking lot by Darrenowski School staff and patrons during library business hours as desired. And that may also mean, residents if they're using it for park and ride. But that may be something that just needs to be felt out as things go forward, and adjusting program accordingly for the new library. And I'll pass it off to Jim, DRA.
Thank you, Todd. And good evening. My name is Jim Barrett. I'm principal with Drummy Rosane Anderson. We're an architectural planning and design firm, South Windsor, Connecticut. Pleased to have the opportunity to share some of the graphics with you this evening. I, like Todd, suffering with a little bit of vocal strain, but it was from last night's game. With me this evening, also from our office, Ron Palillo, our project manager. And what I have here to share, the west rendering, or the west elevational rendering, is that which is seen from Main Street. The east elevational rendering is that from the north parking that Todd was just speaking to. The building is at 29.33 in terms of vertical height, two-story structure. Materially, it's a polyash skin, and we are identifying 3 colors to be utilized through that skin. The first is that of a tan color, reflective of the Historic Society building just across the corner at Meriden Road. The reddish or terracotta color, reflectance of that of the school directly across Main, and the white, many of the civic buildings found here throughout Main Street. It helps us in terms of breaking down the elevation and giving the building unique character in terms of identification of spaces within the building. These are north and south elevations. The north elevation to the top is that facing Meriden Road. The element to the center of it is the community space, the most public spaces within the proposed new library. To the south, the one directly below it, that is the south elevational rendering. Predominant first floor occupier of that space is the children's library, and it does directly have that access to the south parking that both Dave and Todd referenced. This is a rendering, northwest corner of the site, looking south on Main Street. The entry point found at this point, main entrance point from that public entry. Space to the left is that of a maker space, and space directly found here, that is what you had seen in the north elevation, our community space. Beyond, at the first floor level, the children's library, and above the adult library areas at the second floor. This from the northeast or the north parking area. Again, entry point to the facility, tying through and connecting to the Main Street entry point found on the other elevation. To the right, the community space. To the left at the first floor level, children's area, and above the adult room. And particularly on this elevation, a series of study rooms that I'll share with you in plan. Dave did touch on a drive-up, and what we have are book drops that offer an opportunity to have the books drop directly into the building to a secured space as opposed to freestanding box elements that currently reside on the site. This is preferred from a staffing standpoint, from an ability to be able to conveniently get the materials in and out. And at its heart, libraries are that. They're processing facilities able to move material informationally, and this does help in that regard. We also have a transaction window in that elevation, this offering an opportunity to facilitate direct contact with the public should it be needed. It's not anticipated as the facility opens, but our experience through COVID was one where this was often a primary way of the public getting materials from their libraries, and so do have it accounted for in our planning. This elevation from the southeast highlights the children's entry area. This is looking from that south parking lot and again up the western or eastern skin of the building. And then just a brief overview in terms of floor plan. We mentioned the western elevation main entry from Main Street, which is to the bottom of this page, into a large
Hey, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Could I just cut you off here for a
Yes,
second?
certainly.
I appreciate your desire to go into a building. This is a site plan application, however. We're not here to discuss the interior of the building. We're here to talk about the outside. So
Certainly.
I work with architects all the time. I know you want to talk about your creative design. I get it. Great. This is just not the place for it. So
Offering it
But-
only in terms of
Go-
if it
go
would
ahead.
help your consideration of the
Yep,
exterior
all right.
elements, but certainly we understand. At this point, we do have the full P and Z submission that was offered. I can rest here and allow any questions that
yeah,
you may have.
Okay. Any questions from members of the commission? Peter?
Just for clarity, and I know I talked briefly before, so, Dave, so the reason this is a public hearing and not a business meeting site plan recommendation, because normally if it's just a site plan, we would not have a public hearing. And so just for the record, the reason this is a public hearing and not a business meeting site plan is why again?
Because through the chair, it's a governmental facility, so it is required to consider in the public interest so there can be input.
Okay, but normally if it's just a site plan, we would simply have a business meeting and not have that. And that, so that this is not whether or not a library is built, it is simply about the site plan of the library, correct? Okay,
And how it kind of correlates to the surrounding area, whether there's compatibility.
Right.
Which they spoke to.
yep, okay. So my question, whoever wants to answer, is I have a question of the road between the two parking lots. Okay? There a sidewalk there?
The road between the two parking lots.
Yeah.
Currently, there's a, let me-
Because I didn't see a sidewalk on the rendering I had.
Yeah.
Unless it's there, but I don't see it.
there's a sidewalk that comes around to here,
Yeah.
and there's a sidewalk that comes here, and then there's the loading zone striped area. There's not a sidewalk in between those two sidewalks.
So I guess
there.
my concern is if people are traveling between the two parking lots for reasons of safety, to have somewhere to look, to go and not have to like step over things. So that's one concern I have on that road going back and forth. And you said that's two-way, outside of the drop-off thing, that's two-way traffic coming out of there?
It's two-way traffic in this aisle here, and then it's
Yeah.
one way this way.
One way that way, I get it. Is there markings to say which direction you go in?
Yes, there'll be markings as well as signage.
Markings as well as signage,
Correct,
because you
correct.
want to go in,
Because obviously there'll be do not enter signs for the other end.
that's
and-
my
Yeah,
concern about, safety purposes.
Yep.
Is there speed bumps and things like that on anywhere within the property?
There's currently not speed bumps, partly because the width of this driveway is 20 feet, which is considered minimum for emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
But it's also, when you reduce the width of a road, it acts as a traffic calming feature itself.
Yeah, I guess my question it regards the whole property. Here's why I ask. Whichever way I'm coming, I want to beat the light, or I don't want to make the light. And so what do we all do? We cut through. So anything that perhaps could be done to minimize that, presumably we want more use out of the library.
Yeah.
And so whether it's on that road, I get it, you can't put it on that road. But if coming in whichever access point there is,
mean-
it's just a consideration.
Yeah.
Only because I know that.
Totally understand what you're saying, because when it's open and empty, it's only one car going down there, and
you're-
it's not calming anything.
Yeah.
I guess it's just what's suitable. Speed hump is not objectionable unless, but I wouldn't say maybe a removable one, which they have, for plowing purposes, that sort of thing.
Sure, but you get my point, right?
But I get your point, yeah.
Okay.
sure.
All right. So elephant in the room. Going from 173 to 92. And you're convincing me that's good. Or that I shouldn't care because, see, I'm compliant, 172 to 92, and it's not used all the time. Here's my point. I'm being a little flip, but here's my point, okay? A, it does get used on big events. Apple Festival, Darren got something, people do park there, okay? The other is presumably, we want more people to use the library. That's kind of the point, right? So we want more people there. We want to have events there. So consequently, our current standard of what we have for parking, mathematically, may not necessarily be true in the future,
That,
So-
yeah, that's true.
right? So I'm nervous, A, about that calculation. The other nervousness I have is if indeed we need to expand this thing, right? Because I get the current economic conditions can't get what you want, and I'm not going to go down that road, okay? But let's say we want to add to this building somewhere. Maybe on the lawn area, the 8,000 square feet, that's grass. Now, I'm underparked because I've expanded it, and I either lose parking whichever way you go, or indeed, I need to add to it. So the amount of parking concerns me in regards to people are used to parking there for whatever reason, and to say, well, tell Darrenowski go somewhere else is kind of, I don't really know if I agree with that. And I don't know if our forecast of use is adequate to get a decent number.
That's correct, but if, for instance, if, a school was across the street from this building, and
Yeah.
you see how many cars are parked in this parking
Yeah.
lot when nobody's here, and if they were using this parking lot as well, there would be
Yeah.
a big problem.
Sure.
And
I
you would
guess,
tell,
but it's
you
a
would tell,
municipal
you would
lot.
probably tell, but you would tell
Yeah.
them, yeah, you can't park
Yeah.
here.
But it's a
So-
municipal lot, right?
So but it wasn't at the time, it was put forward as a expansion of the library lot.
Yeah.
It became a municipal lot because it wasn't being fully utilized because it was over-designed.
Yeah.
So in this case, go back to your point, we're still at 92 spaces. We're 60% beyond IT minimum. So we're still, even with the reduction, we're still 60% above the minimum required by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, number one. Number two, the drive-up window and full service and all of that, that takes a lot of pressure off people coming in to the library, because a lot of people now, if they're not just dropping off and they need to pick up other books, maybe they're not, maybe they want the contactless, but they can't because there's no drive-up window, or maybe they're elderly and they don't want to get out of their car, but they can't. So that will help because people will have that service, and as much as that service may not be fired up and have a certain schedule at the beginning, they may need to figure out what that schedule is to help out. As far as the event, like the functional space, event space, I think it kind of, you could say the reverse is true, can't you? You could say if the program for the library is that there's going to be a large event in that space, well, guess where the parking can overflow? In the other direction, the Darrenowski School, because they're not going to be open at night, or they'll have to coordinate that they don't have something going on at night. So it doesn't just mean that Darrenowski can come over to the library and don't kick them out, but vice versa can also occur, because they're both town buildings. So with this, I can explain to you that most likely, I would say that there's not going to be an expansion of this building. This is pretty much it for this site. That green space is going to be very valuable because there's no green space on the site now. This is a hardscape site. The only green space is on a slope that you can't even use, because it's so steep. So I think it's going to be a benefit. I think the town, in operations of the new library, will have to look closely at scheduling and program. So that will have to come in to play with, what do we anticipate for parking? Maybe a further parking study needs to be done once the new library is completed, and see what the parking demand is on a regular basis for normal activities, and then understand how they incorporate the programming, the ramp up in programming, shall we say, from there. But unfortunately, due to the limitations of layout design, budget, that was one of the reasons why, as Dave mentioned, we did maintain these parking lot areas basically as is. We don't want to mess with something that actually is good the way it is, and it's going to cost money to change for really no real benefit. So the layout works. It is optimal in these locations. But I acknowledge your previous comment, all your comments, but we'll have to come up with something for the traffic calming for sure.
Okay. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when this old library was built, because I used to go across the street when that was the library, now it's historical site. is there anything worth saving in that building to incorporate in a new one, or is it?
I wouldn't be the one to ask, but I don't think the structure, anything from the structure itself is,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
at the end of its useful life, as they say.
Okay,
But I think there definitely are obviously some interior elements that will be in some ways incorporated, and
Okay.
that may be limited, you know, limited uses or reuses. I can't speak to that, but other than that, I don't know that any materials are worth saving.
in regards to your phased plan, which I appreciate,
Mm-hmm.
is there a proposed traffic route for trucks, you know, preferred where they're gonna go, up and down Main Street, in a particular direction up Marion Avenue? Is there a preferred where they're going, which street they're gonna be doing during the construction?
I think.
Or have we not thought about that?
No, I mean, it's really somewhat dictated by, obviously, the phasing scheme itself. So when you look at Phase 1, I mean, we have to provide two means of access for emergency purposes. This is going to be primarily closed off. You don't want trucks coming in and out of here. So that only leaves this by process of
No,
elimination.
I don't mean on the site, I mean which road
What you
they're
mean
gonna be
routing?
on. Yeah.
I mean, they're both state roads, so I mean, you know, they're both trafficked state roads.
Except
Yeah.
Marion Avenue has a lot more residential on it.
They do. I mean, I guess it just depends on where the origination of the trip comes from or is going to. They could probably have, from a general contractors, you know, in their logistics, say, you know, hey, let's try to keep to Route 10. you
Yeah,
know?
I'm just trying to minimize, because it's a big project.
Yeah, understood, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so anything that can help, particularly with folks living around the area here in Truckers, you know, and stuff, that get to do that, you know, we ask that question, you know, for bigger projects, you know, which way people are going.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Okay, that's all I have.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Solka.
Just a couple of questions. On the flow, on the east side, what I'm looking at, slide number, I think 13. In the drop-off area, you've got two-way traffic on the east side, correct? That's what
Correct.
you said?
Yes.
And in the drop-off area, which is on the east side as well, and how do you, the only way to get through that is coming from the south entrance? Because you can't come from Meriden Avenue to do a drop-off
Well,
based
you-
on that flow, correct?
Well, you could, I mean.
I mean-
You could come from the south, obviously, come over here and come
Well,
through.
yeah, but that,
But
right.
you could come the other direction, and you could either, you know, navigate this turn, which is tight. Obviously, doing like a 180 turn is not ideal. We're not precluding that from being attempted, but they can come down here, swing around, come back around, and go through. It's just basically a loop around here and come back.
I'm looking at that and just saying how confusing that's going to be for someone that wants to drop something off. And I don't know whether any signage would help.
We do
saying
have-
the drop-off come from Route 10 versus
Okay.
Meriden Avenue.
Well, I agree. Posting signs, informational signs closer to the road tend to be overlooked. We can probably do something that's maybe in this area here, you know, somewhere here. But I guess it really comes down to is, I mean, we do have signs here indicating, you know, what's going on clearly. It's on the site layout plan. So we call out all the signage and everything. But if we need to add additional signs to say, you know, drop off ahead, you know, or this, or, I don't know. I mean, or, you know.
But the question is, if someone comes in a pickup truck, will they be able to make that turn coming in from Meriden Avenue, going around that, whatever it is, to the drop-off? Will they be able to make that turn?
They'll be able to make that turn if they pull into the other lane, like, and pull across.
Okay.
So it would, I mean, if nobody's coming in the other direction, that's how they'll make the turn.
And why, just a question, why is that road so narrow? You said it was a narrow road. Why are you making that driveway so narrow? What's the point?
Well, a couple of reasons. One is for traffic calming. Two is for every foot of width of that, we have to extend the retaining wall like a couple feet. So to keep this wall down, because we're tight, everything's tight between here and here. This is the slope that we're chewing into in order to achieve these driveways. So the further you move into in this direction, the taller the wall gets. So the idea was to keep the wall, instead of seeing a 20-foot retaining wall, was to try to keep the wall as low, and cost too. Obviously, retaining walls are a significant cost to the project.
And Jim, you think that is, will work, that narrow driveway, or?
Narrowing roads is a traffic calming feature, as was indicated. I believe it would be wide enough. It's not a long stretch of roadway. People should be, traveling a light speed within that area.
Well, I'm just, because what he said was that when you come in from Meriden Avenue, you've got to make a swing to go into the other lane in order to make that turn into the drop-off area.
And one-way circulation.
What's that?
It's one-way circulation.
No, it's two-way.
He means coming this.
He's got two arrows, one going in each direction.
This is two-way.
So he has to go into the other oncoming lane in order to make that turn into the drop-off.
But I guess the word should be out that if there's going to be
If what?
if you're dropping off a book, that you come in off of.
Well, that's
Route
what
10.
I'm getting at with the signage.
Right.
There should be some kind of signage that's saying, I don't think they can make that turn, but.
I mean, we could come up with something to say, but I guess once the only issue is once you put the sign someplace, like even here, they're already there.
Right.
They're already in the parking lot. So I think, I don't have the silver bullet here, but I think one of the things to consider is that over time, it's going to be something that just becomes known as well. I mean, and everybody's going to say, but there is an answer. I mean, you just keep going straight and you loop around, you come back.
Yeah.
So-
Or you, Mr. Chairman, or you preclude it by making that island longer.
We could elongate that island so that it
There's no
can't take
chance.
that turn in. So we can create more of a point on it, so that it's only, turns in from that direction.
Mr. Chairman, was there another drop-off area by foot, or was that the only drop-off area?
That is the only drop-off. I mean, that could also be a foot drop-off area if somebody pulled through here. If they pull up right here, this is like there's bollards along here just for protection, but this is just a terrace area here. So if somebody needed to get dropped off or picked up, they could come through here. I mean, I don't think there's going to be like a lineup here for the window. I mean, unless they're giving stuff away, but not like Chick-fil-A. But I think it will work out in both ways. So it could be also used as not for books, but for people as well.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Sure.
Commissioner Clark?
You have a lot of thought to the green space, which aligns with our POCD. Can you walk through the thought process through the design of the building? Because there are surrounding more colonial style buildings in that area, and this is a very modern look.
So as we considered the building from a design standpoint, thinking of it first from a siting, having presence on Main Street, having it centrally located within the available site area, those were things that we looked to as positives that then could potentially give us some opportunity for the adjoining green space that you're touching on. In terms of the volumetrics of the building, looking at it as a two-story structure, having it read with smaller volumes and shapes were things that we look to. In terms of the actual expression of the building, we did not attempt to make this something that reflected the more historic buildings that are found here throughout Main Street, but we wanted it to be inspired by those and reflect those in color, in proportion, That was our thought process in the building.
Yeah, could you just go back to the slide, the exterior slide? I guess it's the angling of it, the box shape, I guess. So I guess
So
if there's anything.
Is this angling is what you're referring to, the roof?
The angling, of all the angles, I think, are making it look very modern. So I think that if there could be anything that would complement, so I appreciate the color complements. So if there was anything exterior that could complement the adjacent buildings, as far as the design, it would probably flow better.
So in reading a pure elevation like this, as we're all probably aware, this is hundreds of feet away from the building, looking at it dead-on elevation. The building is never perceived like that. The opportunity to view the building is always in perspective, and I do believe these are more informative. So, for instance, the reason for this portion of the building wanting to have a larger volume was that of the fact that it has the largest kind of gathering spaces. It volumetrically is more along the lines of this type of space, where we wouldn't want it to have a low ceiling and have a pancake effect over a larger space. So we were looking for that. We did explore ideas of a flat ridge line along here or a flat roof line along here. One concern that we had was at the elevation as it looks to the north from some key spaces at the second floor. Wanted to try to reduce kind of the sense of looking into the backside of a building. And by having that soft slope, we're able to open it so that you have more of a sky view in that area of the building. That really does constitute the only major angling of the building other than the shaping of this portion of the facade, which rather than being orthogonal with the site does press forward angular in plan. The thought process there was, as traffic moves up and down Main Street, trying to give a sense of arrival, kind of a beacon, if you will, an area of light where it could announce the entry before you actually perceive the entry. Because we're talking about vehicular speeds moving along Main Street as compared to, you know, it works in both, but it's a predominance of vehicular speed. So it's that idea that from several hundred feet away, you can identify entry point and then have it reinforced as you kind of drive closer, or you are pedestrian and you're walking at those speeds. And that shows itself here. And I think we have one other. No, I do not.
What's the proposed material on the exterior?
So this is a poly-ash material, something akin to a cement fiberboard material, durable, long wearing. It is a painted material, so it does have that as a maintenance requirement long-term. But it does hold paints very well. We've used it in other library projects and have seen it received as a successful material that has a comfortable human scale to it, but it does not necessarily read as residential because the board widths and the types of reveals that can be found in it are distinctly different than what you might find in a normal 4.5 or 4.5 or 5.5 inch exposure clapboard siding.
How often does it need to be painted?
So we explored that. It does hold longer than you might expect. The range that we had was a 12 to 15 year kind of cycle,
Okay.
but it is something that does require that consideration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor? Okay.
One last question about the parking study. I'm sorry. So the comment was made that the parking study could potentially be redone once construction is completed. But my question is, why would we not consider doing another parking study in the near future when the library is holding an event?
Well, first, for clarification, we did not perform a formal parking study. This wasn't part of our scope for the project, but as we considered what the parking impact would be, we did do I guess you would say, abbreviated monitoring or observations, which was data collection. So as we don't have a study report, it's not your standard type of analysis. However, it's still an analysis. It's still based on actual observed parking. But to your point, I don't believe that the existing library, we could perform something similar during an event, and these could be sort of like on-call monitoring, like, hey, heads up, there's an event, can you come down and do some counts during this event, or there's something like that, and that's fine, or multiple events. I'm not sure that what the existing space and capacity, or even what events may occur proposed versus existing, or what this program is now for events, even at the library, if there are any. I'm not in tune with that. So we'd be open to that. But as I mentioned, I don't think that, I think it's a programming issue ultimately that needs to be, determined. What's the optimal time for an event based on all available parking for the full build out of the new library and the site, in addition to any overflow parking that could be going on to Darrenowski during non-school hours.
Now, with the Darrenowski situation, it is a fair point that if there's overflow to the library from Darrenowski, what's to stop it vice versa?
Yes.
Could there be conversations with administrators at Darrenowski to come to some kind of agreement if that is the understanding that it's necessary, so that there's no contention?
Probably. I shouldn't answer that question specifically, but I would imagine that would be possible. But, again, it's not to say, like, we got this, there's a new library now and nobody could park here. Like this is, because really there's not, as we observed, there's not even during the peak, we're going to have, as I said before, 92 spaces, between both. They're roughly 45 each or whatever. The combined peak that we observed was 49. That's the most cars we saw in the entire lot, itself. So that's almost half of that, even during the peak observation we had. And that was all, we looked at it 3 times a day for several days, or a week even. And it wasn't necessarily during an event, but that was normal. So I think they can, on a normal basis, probably accommodate that parking as it is. And I don't want to cause any problems here in the south parking lot. But of course, it's going to, with preferential locations where people like to park over time, it may just work itself out. Maybe people want to come in the north entrance, or the east entrance rather, instead of the south. There's 3 entrances on this building that are very welcoming.
Went to a pretty jumping craft fair once, I got to tell you.
Well, then you might be fighting over your space, but.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for answering my questions.
No
All
problem.
set, Kat?
Yes.
All set? Caitlin?
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm going to circle back to the parking because it seems to be the conversation du jour. I really want to circle back to a comment that you made that, and it sounded, and maybe I misinterpreted what you said, but that programming would be limited by the parking. That we are building this space and we hope to have this as the next few generations of their use of a building. We're opening it up for new events, and we're trying to have bigger events there, which, considering the current use of the building, seems like, this space might work. but this is not what we have now, this is what we're gonna have in the future based on this building. So how do we approve a plan that we're using existing data for to project onto the use of something that hasn't even been built yet? And then kind of tying that into the fact that we are trying to do more programming, but it sounds like you're concerned that we can't really do the programming that the building is built for because it's limited by the parking.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion. Let me reiterate some things. One is that the ITE manual is the basis for the minimum, okay? And that's the 57 spaces minimum. What I mentioned was, and we're providing 92 spaces. So we're much beyond the minimum. This is kind of difficult to reflect on what you're saying because we're also referencing a number of parking spaces that nobody has the original basis for, okay? The 173 that are there right now, nobody has that original basis. What's the basis for that? It's way, way more parking than that library needs right now. So we're talking about an overcapacity parking lot versus what we're proposing. All I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily need to restrict or limit programming, but the reality is the new building is going to have somewhat of a different functionality, and it has to, there maybe have to be adaptations to, certain timing of certain things. You're not necessarily, maybe you're not going to have, a grand event in the middle of the day, where it's that's going to draw, tons of people that you can't even estimate, while, it's also the peak time for the normal business of the library, but that's with any place. You wouldn't do that either. I mean, you wouldn't do that here. I mean, even tonight, with just this meeting, we're probably filled that parking lot, most of it, because there's also cars that are parked there for the town. But if you come to a public hearing here, you regardless, you probably fill up most of the parking here. So if we had a public hearing in the middle of the day, when all the business is going on, normal business going on at town hall or at the municipal center, you wouldn't have enough parking here. So we have to. There's peak events that occur, but we can't anticipate what those events. All those events will be and what they'll draw.
But what we could.
There's a seating
we could-
capacity,
well,
certainly.
For all intents and purposes, though, we can project based on the maximum capacity of the hall or the event space, what we could expect to see. So if that space
Right.
fits 30 people, or if there's 2 event spaces, and then, again, to the chair's point, we didn't talk about the inside, but, if you can fit 100 people in there, and all of a sudden, 5 other people or 10 other people want to bring their kids to the library while that event's happening, well, now we're up against a wall. Not only that, but, we have 92 spaces, as you said, minus staff, minus handicap spaces, minus the EVs, minus anybody that wants to show up to go to.
Oh, I wouldn't call those
Darren
minuses. That's not
Okay.
accurate.
I'll leave the
that's-
handicaps there, but I'm going to take the EVs away from you.
Well, I wouldn't say that because the EV there's a car in that EV spot every day.
Taking it away because somebody
Every
else
day.
across the street that's going to Darrenowski wants to charge their car.
Well, I'm just
Or
saying.
wherever the case may be, but
Yeah.
that spot's taken.
But somebody else could certainly come in and use it as a patron of the library, and nobody's to say that that's not the person that's doing that today.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to jump off the parking thing because I think we've got there. So a couple of things, safety-wise. Around the child area, you said that there's a privacy fence there, correct? I don't know if that was your piece.
Yes, there's a security fence, like a picket fence around that whole area.
Yep. Is there daycare programming that's going to be going on at the building?
I can't answer that.
We have, I'm the library director, Matt Earls. We do have.
So hold on a second, please. Let's get up to the mic. Let's give us your name and address, and then
Sure.
let's answer the question, please.
My apologies. My name is Matt Earls. I'm the new library director. Live at 25 Moffett Drive in Guilford.
Welcome to our town, by the way.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you.
So yes, we do have story hour at the library pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day. So we have an ongoing, I wouldn't call it daycare, but we have a lot of, I call them littles, all day long in large groups. 25 is currently the number we limit each of those to. So each of those, a parent or caregiver and maybe another sibling. So right there we have 25 cars. That's a good sized program for us. The only times I've actually seen the parking lot filled was the parent teacher baseball game at Darrenowski.
Very popular.
Go Teachers. And I know, as I understand it, there's another overflow parking at Darrenowski. So I'm not worried about the number of parking spots at the library. I look forward to filling it and having people walk down the street. If we had some spaces for parents of young children, I think that would go a long way to making sure that those EV parkers aren't taking spots away from people with kids. Any other, do you have any other library-related questions, programming?
Not right now, but thank you. So, so currently, since I got you here, so currently it's about 25 kids per those child programs. Do you anticipate that expanding based on the new building?
25 is a pretty good number for store area. You get many more than that, it's a little too chaotic. I imagine we will have more of them.
Okay. So more frequent.
More frequent, and the spaces, there are 3 program rooms. So, I mean, we could conceivably have, I think it's like 280 people in a program. Those would be really massive events, apple harvest kind of a thing,
Right.
where I think people will be walking from other places.
Yeah, and as the gentleman said, you can't over-engineer for everything, and I get that. But I'm looking for day-to-day use, and hopefully we're going to use the heck out of this thing.
Yes.
All right, I got you now. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump back to the child play area then. So around that space, we have a privacy fence. Are there any safety features to that fence, or is it just like a plastic fence that if somebody was not in their right mind can drive right through and hit the littles, as we say?
Dave Dixon again with SLR. The space is about 25 feet by 25 feet. There is a fence. There will be a aluminum picket fence that goes all the way around it. There will be a locking gate with a emergency push bar that will allow the children in an event of emergency to actually leave the building through that area.
Okay. But as far as like safety bollards or anything like that, that's not planned for.
It's surrounded by a sidewalk and a curb.
Curb? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm happy with that.
And landscaping as well. And the wall itself is elevated. Inboard of the area, the wall is somewhat elevated.
So
there's actually a freestanding wall that will come up from the outside, along the outside edge, and then it will step down on the inside with like a large a shelf or bench for the kids to do activities on, to sit on, or they can actually lay on there if they wanted to. It's wide enough that they can do whatever they need.
something enough to keep accidents from happening.
Correct.
Okay, between that wall, the curb, the fence.
Yes.
You should, okay. You gotta get up a lot of speed in 40 feet to do any more of the damage than that.
Todd Ritchie again. Just, there's also, we do, sorry, it's not working now. There we go. Nope, dying. I'll use the pointer. So there's also bollards along this edge here, so that when vehicles turn in, if they overturn, they wouldn't crush into make contact with the building or the children's area as well. So.
Oh, good. Perfect. Thank you. That's a good idea. And I think, what's the length of construction? Is there a proposed time? Did we talk about that already?
What's your question, Caleb?
How long it will take?
The duration of the construction?
Duration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, Christine Longo from Weddington, and the construction manager. I live at Forswick's Farm Road, Plantsville. Construction's supposed to start in June and then end the following December, so December 24.
So in that time, we'll be shifting both parking lots from?
Yes.
construction, demolition, that kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah, both phases, phase 1 and 2.
great. I think we got everything I needed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You all set? Any other questions from members of the commission? Second time.
Sorry.
Commissioner Santago.
I guess, and I don't know if it's for both Jims. So the retaining wall, are you worried about water flow or flooding or whatever from the hill onto the new parking lot or that driveway?
I'm not sure if the building code would require safety fencing.
Okay.
It's not really adjacent to a walkway.
Yeah,
Um,
and I guess consequently to that, this is a bad year to ask that because we didn't have any snow, but snow removal from that narrow parking lot and where snow would, because like now you pile big heaps of snow there, you know, type thing, and if you have a narrow parking lot, like, now what? So, you know, this year we got nothing, but on years where we get a lot, snow coming off the hill and getting plowed out of there, and, you know, you store it traditionally
Yeah.
at the end where nobody is, so like, is there a plan for that, or?
Yeah, so there's a design intent. We don't have and I can show you where it's going to go.
Yeah.
So back to your wall question, the retaining wall is a concrete block, modular block retaining wall. Standard design is, they have horizontal geogrid restraint plus drainage. Drainage is behind the wall, integrated into that whole system. It's a delegated design, so the supplier manufacturer provide the design, and then that drain will just basically connect into the closest catch basin.
Gotcha.
It's subsurface flow, so it's considered insignificant impact on the drainage system. Next, I'll go to the snow. I guess that was the other question, right?
Yep.
So here this whole area right here, everything can be pushed across this parking lot into this area here.
Okay.
Everything can also be pushed down in this direction through here. And everything here, you know, we'll have some areas along the edges, some island space, but I mean, it's similar to what it is now, and they'll have to maneuver it wherever they can to, you know, again, similar to what it is now.
Yeah, just,
in that space.
you know, the point being, we have a lot bigger space now, so if it's unused,
Yeah,
that's
no.
where the snow goes. Now,
Well,
that way-
you actually have a bigger space, but I don't want to bring it up. Less parking. So there's actually less snow removal because of that. But there is a sizable area over here that can have it moved over, and that's what we plan for.
Yeah, in the wall, so that stuff sliding out, I guess, in that narrow.
The wall is
way.
going to cut into the slope as it is, and that's what I meant to mention is along that wall, there's actually a 3-foot separation to the wall from the face of the curb, or back of the curb to the face of the wall. So there's a snow shelf built.
Got it,
built over
that's
there, so.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, you answered it.
Good point.
Now I'm done,
All set. Okay.
sorry.
Any other questions from members of the commission? My turn. 4-00E speaks about noise abatement for outside mechanicals, that type of thing. What's the proposal here? How are we abating the noise from the HVAC systems and that type of thing?
In terms of our locations of equipment, it is rooftop equipment. We currently do not have any specific attenuation within the design.
Say that again?
We currently do not have any acoustical attenuation screening, standalone screening, other than the casing of the unit itself. That's the attenuation that we
Okay,
have.
so four dash, our regulations, right? We have them, it's there to provide an idea of types of things that we're looking at, right? Set you all with important things to us, if you will, right?
Yes, sir.
4-00F speaks to screening of dumpsters, outside mechanicals, mailbox kiosks, et cetera. Specifically calling out mechanical devices, HVAC systems,
Yep.
right? Heating, plumbing, that type of thing. Did you just say that you don't have any screening of these outside mechanicals?
No,
or-
I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm not saying,
Okay.
I thought the question was specifically acoustical screening.
Well,
Freestanding.
it was.
Okay,
which
thank
is
you.
Which is
That's-
4-00E, the preceding paragraph speaks to noise abatement must be, I'll read it to you, word for word, right? Quote, "shall be shielded and insulated in a manner which shall deaden the noise and deflect sound waves away from abutting premises." That means that it's not going to people who live adjacent, right?
Understood.
So are you saying you're not adhering to that?
I'm saying I don't have the information for you
Okay.
this evening.
Okay.
I have engineers that will be able to provide us that information.
Who will?
I have engineers
Okay.
within our team that will be able to provide you
All right.
that information. To your point about, are we screening the units? We are. And they are,
You're screening those rooftop units?
yes, sir.
Could you show me where that is? Is that
That's-
screen up on top? Okay.
That's a roof screen.
Got it.
Within that is a much smaller rooftop piece of equipment.
Okay.
Uh,
4-00.4. Any adjoining lot that contains a residence. Do we have a residence on the south side of this?
We do.
We do. So this is a lot that contains, adjoining lot contains a residence, right? A light-proof fence constructed of wood shall be installed in addition to trees to prevent automobile lights from causing a nuisance to the adjoining residence. Do you have a fence made of wood on that property or on that border?
It's Odd Richie again. We have a fence made of vinyl, which lasts longer than wood. If that's objectionable, we'll be happy to change it to wood. So we have a 6-foot vinyl fence, and we have a row of dense arborvitae. So we have both on that,
Okay.
on that edge.
Okay, and it allows us to change out the composite or the makeup of the fence, that we can do that.
Correct,
But-
sure.
But, okay, I just want to acknowledge it. Let's stay on that property over there, though. There was a question that was asked, or maybe it was more of a suggestion that was asked by our planning department about access easement, right?
I'm not, yeah, I wasn't sure, I mean, access easement to that property.
So question C5.
Why would that be needed?
Hold on, Todd.
Okay, sure.
Question C5 says, is an access easement appropriate to the adjacent property to the south? That's that property, correct?
Yeah, and we said no.
What you said was that the town doesn't own the property and they
And
have
that they have
access
a-
to the main street.
Correct.
Okay. This commission likes access easements, especially along main corridors such as Main Street, Queen Street, West Street, that type of stuff.
Okay.
Right? Sorry?
I said okay.
Okay. So would you be open, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen in the business meeting, I'm just asking a question. Would you be open to a requirement that an access easement be provided for on that southern border of the property?
I can't answer that. I would have to defer to the library board members.
Okay. Let's,
Again, Paul Champagne, Vice Chair of the Building Committee.
Hey, Paul.
We have vetted all these things. We've not heard that before from anybody about access for residents. I know in businesses, we used to do that all the time, but for residential, I don't think they have a driveway that extends past the house. They would have to construct one to come to the back side of it, because there is in the back side on the south side, on the west side, there's a 50-foot strip that's owned by somebody else. It's owned by, actually, I believe, the building that was burnt out. If you look at the property, there's a 50-foot easement in there. We've been looking at that to see if there's something we can do.
okay.
But the building is still under repair, and there's not much, we're looking actually for staging equipment. But the other areas that you've talked about have been vetted in the building committee meetings.
Okay.
And this is a compromise between the library board, the committee, and the employees, and the old director and the new director. So we're trying to blend it all together
Okay.
to make it work for everything. So we will bring that to the meeting. Mr. Schroeder will be there, and he can present that to us and see what the requirement would be for the town to construct that.
Well, I appreciate that, Paul, and I'm here to back up our regulations, which are public record, and everybody who comes in with any site plan should read our regulations, so they understand what the requirements of our regulations are specific to this central business district, which is the zone that this property sits in, correct? I'm just reading from the regulations. Another one, 4-00.5 speaks to yard and building lighting, and essentially says that no lighting from this property shall bleed over into any adjacent properties. Do you have any study that shows that any lighting here is or is not going to be bleeding over into the adjacent properties?
I'd have to ask to get the architect back up here.
Okay.
There has been a photometric plan submitted, and we do have full cutoff light.
Okay, I see it. All right. Okay, I'm done. Any other questions before we open up to members of the public?
Yep.
Seeing none. Todd? Nope. You guys want to say anything? I'll give you one last chance. I'm going to invite up people, members of the public, to support or oppose, and then you'll be invited up to answer any questions that might be asked during that process. But before I do that, I'll give you one last chance to close this part out for now.
The project manager tells me our generator on site does have an acoustical enclosure.
Okay.
The rooftop units, we do have the enclosures, but we can get specific information to
Okay.
be able to respond to your
Okay,
question.
all right, all right. All right, so let's open it up to members of the public. If there's anyone here to testify on this application, either for or against, please come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and share your thoughts, please. Going twice. All right. Do we have a reason to keep this open? I'm wondering if there's questions that still need to be answered, or are we all set?
Mr. Chairman, anything that's not, we could say, to our satisfaction or to, staff or
Okay,
whoever,
okay.
as far as the acoustics.
Are you all comfortable with that, to the satisfaction of town staff, eventually, if that's what we decide to do? Everyone good?
Yeah.
So there's no reason to keep the public hearing open? I assume that you don't want to come back up and say another thing, because I'm just going to close the public hearing, and that you have no other option, or opportunity after that. Are you all set? All set? All right, I'm getting an affirmative from the applicant, so we will close the public hearing on that one. Moving on to 8B, Jeremy Burubi, home occupation application for retail sales of firearms and other items allowed per FFL 7. Weekend appointments only sales, property located at 338 Town Line Road, zoned in an R40 HO86. Jeremy,
How you doing?
I assume.
Yes, Jeremy Ruby from 338 Town Line Road in Southington.
So Jeremy, just explain to us what you want to do there.
So I'm just trying to make some extra money on the side, weekend sales only. Well, mainly transfers, not too many firearms, but there will be firearm sales there.
Okay. Any question, anything else? All right. I know. Any questions from members of the commission?
Sure.
Peter?
Could you talk about what security you have in the house? And also, forgive my ignorance, when you talk transfers, what does that mean?
Transfers and you transfer ownership of firearms.
And so what does that,
So if
again,
I
I'm
was to sell-
ignorant,
if
so
I
what does
was
that mean?
to- If I sold you a gun, you'd come over, do the paperwork, and be on your merry way in 15 minutes.
And so you would facilitate the transfer, is that
Correct,
right?
yep.
It is? Okay. So any storage at your home?
I mean, I do have storage, I do have safes. It's a brand-new house. I have security system, cameras, steel doors.
That's the sort of thing we're kind of
Yeah, no,
concerned about.
it's fences, and there's, I'm not getting into the house.
And your licensing is what? So if somebody wants to do that, your process to allow that is what?
An FFL, followed by an SOT, correct?
Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Any other questions for members of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, this appointment is for, everything will be shipped, or is this going to be weekend sales, during the sales, people going to show up at your house? How does this work?
So it's mainly weekend sales because I'm busy during the week. Stuff gets shipped to a UPS box. Federally, it has to go to a UPS box. It can't come in regular mail due to the fact of what it is. So, yeah, essentially weekend sales. I don't want to deal with other people during the week, so I stick to that to the weekend. So,
And it's only done by appointment?
correct.
No drop-in?
No.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chairman.
it is a dead-end road too, so it doesn't affect any of the traffic or, any of that nature. And my house is fenced in as well.
Go, sir. Okay, Jeremy, anything else?
That's
No?
it.
All right, we'll close the public hearing on that one. We'll move on to the business meeting, so.
Thank you.
Stick around, I think.
Get to ask for it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone for or against that application? Jeremy did such a great job. I figured they sold the crowd, so.
Yeah, great.
So again, is there anyone who'd like to testify for or against that application? Seeing none, is there a reason to keep the public hearing open? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on that one, move on to the business meeting. Item 9A, DRA Architects, site plan application to construct a new library building and demolition of existing library property located at 255, 269, 281, 289 Main Street, zoned in a central business, SPR 1863. It's our pleasure, folks.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve SPR 1863.
Do you have any steps?
Any stipulations on that, Bob?
The island?
The stipulations would be that we get the final approval from the planning and engineering department before, it's fully approved.
So to the satisfaction of the
Correct.
of the town staff? Is
Yep,
that what you mean?
yes. Thank you for putting those.
We're here to help each other, Bob.
I know that, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Can we make a second with a comment?
Well, technically, I think we need a second right now, right? Before we can move on to discussing the motion that's here.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And Commissioner Clark looks like she wants to say something. Why don't you go for it, Jen?
I have a comment. I think if there's anything that you can do during this process to conform the design to other adjacent properties, I think that it would be more of a more flowing environment. So if there's any, when you get to lamps and just the details of, just trying to accommodate the feel of the downtown, and it is a major entryway, and apple harvest, it tends to extend on. It's just a very important part of the town. So any extra efforts would be very much appreciated. Is my comment.
All right,
Can I expand on that, Mr. Chair?
absolutely. Commissioner Coles.
Thank you, Mr.
Expand on that.
So I think the applicant testified to the fact that, there's red hues and there's beige hues and there's white hues to match the brick and the masonry and wood structures from down the street. But we're not using brick or masonry or wood. We're using fabricated materials that don't quite match the aesthetic that we have downtown. So I think I'm picking up what you're throwing down, and I do have some concerns that it's not going to match. Even though we're using the same colors, the color of brick is not brick. That's kind of my point on that. I'll let that piece of it go out there. I have other things to discuss, but I'll let somebody else go next.
Well, Caleb, why don't you just throw it
Yeah,
out
do
there
your
now?
stuff.
Go ahead. We don't have to wait for you to
Yeah.
discuss your other things. We
You
have a
have the
motion on
floor,
the
go.
floor, so
Okay.
fire away.
So then I'd like to amend the
You'd like to request that the motion
request.
be amended.
I don't get to do this very often, Mr.
All
Chair,
right.
so I'm a little rusty.
I'm helping you too,
Thank you, sir.
Caleb, so go ahead.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to request that we include facades that match, not just in color, but in substrate, the surrounding flavor of the community.
Is that clear?
Character.
I totally understand what you're requesting. My concern is that is such an subjective and intense design criteria. I don't think it's going to be upon staff to enforce that in a stip. I think what you're saying is that doesn't fit our regulations as far as the POCD, but you want them to massage it to make it more close to the regs or fit within the characteristics. But I would ask that you not put that decision on town staff who work for the people who are putting this forward.
Right.
Budgetarily, is that a word? Budgetarily?
Sure, we understand
We
what you're
get you.
saying, Jen.
Budgetarily, we're trying to keep costs down, and so I don't know that that's something that we would want to stipulate as far as the materials, because that would be probably a concern.
I can concede that.
Commissioner Solka.
I had a comment on it along the same lines that Jen was talking about. When I first saw the drawing now, that I like, the way it's laid out. I have some concerns about the parking and the driveway and the configuration, but I like this visual. When I first saw the building, when he threw up the building, the different perspectives of the building, the first thing I thought about is it looks like a factory. It looks like a factory building, and I know that's my own opinion, and I know that the building committee has worked tirelessly on trying to fit this together into a budget. But when I first looked at it, I'm saying, that looks like a factory building to me, and I think the only thing we can do as a committee is, we've got it on the record, we can't tell them that, because like, as the attorney said, it's like subjective, but when you first look at it, it doesn't fit the character of the town, I don't think, and it looks like, to me, like a factory, or it looks like a school building, like, DePaulo and Kennedy. It's just, does nothing for me. I'm sure the internals are gonna work for the town, but on the outside, to me, it just looks like a factory. So, that's just my comment to get it on the record.
I'll expand on that because I agree. I think that there's nothing attractive about the building that I saw, to be blunt. But I think that we do have the latitude to dictate that as a special permit, that we do have some, I'm getting a no, I'm getting no. What? It's a site plan, right? Yeah, okay. But I agree. I don't like the way that this looks. And, to take it a step further on a piece that we don't really have preview over here is the signage there. I want to see a sign that we all could be proud of because it is a gateway and it's such a central piece of our landscape in downtown. Based on what that rendering, I'm not confident that that sign's going to be anything attractive. I think it's going to be bland and, again, to be blunt, because I feel like that is ugly. I think it's going to be ugly. And, that doesn't help me on this site plan, frankly. I also think that there were other things that were brought up about traffic calming. I don't think that the turning radius on that drop-off area is sufficient enough. I don't think that they could really do anything to make it sufficient. I see a lot of K turns going on there that are going to back up traffic on the other side. And just safety concerns. I can't remember if it was you, Peter, or Jen, who brought up the sidewalks in that area. I'm discouraged that that's not there. I get, hey, we have a retaining wall there, and that means we're going to have to pay costs. And, cost is important, just as it always is, but, that's not really what we talk about here. We talk about, public safety and that type of thing. I'm not encouraged by the way that that's laid out. I also you know, as I said during the public hearing, I think that we should have an access easement between those two properties. In the event that that other property to the south gets developed into something, I think that we can make that a requirement, not that it has to be part of today, but, if that property gets developed, that this property agrees that they will provide an easement on their part of the fence or line, if you will. So, I have concerns, I guess is what I'm signaling here, so, but I'm just one of seven. Peter?
So I agree with what you said, Mr. Chair. My concern is, as you said, twofold. One, which is the traffic flow throughout and use of either some sort of a deterrent there, but also the sidewalk for that access road is not there. It's halfway there. So I don't like that design, particularly that the applicant testified that it could also be a walk-up drop-off. So if it's a walk-up drop-off, then I need sidewalks across the whole thing, which is not there. I also share Commissioner Salka's concern regarding the flow in that area, that you are, A, crossing over traffic in order to take a left-hand turn into there, and the gyrations in order to do that. So I'm unhappy with the design of that particular aspect of it. I understand the smaller road to lessen speed, I get that, but I think that area is problematic mainly for sidewalk purposes and how traffic has to get in and out of there. So that's, from a site perspective, that's problematic to me. And I share both your two comments and many of the comments in regard to aesthetics. So I would say I agree with the thoughts that have been said here. But I don't know, I guess I'm unsure, Mr. Chair, what is within our purview site plan wise
Yeah,
in that regard.
let me ask to that point, Peter, a little bit, because I'm looking at the regulations right now.
Yeah.
A point of clarification, I guess we'll call it, is that this is a special permit application, which.
It's just a site plan. Mr.
It's
Chairman,
just a
it
site-
required a public hearing, but it wasn't a special permit.
Okay.
Due to the governmental use of it.
But under the central business district, aren't they required to adhere to Section 8 of our regulations? I thought I
Under
saw.
site plan review for business zones, they would be.
They're required to adhere to
Essential
Section,
business is part of the business.
to Section 8 of our
Yeah, should, yeah.
zoning regulations, which is the special permit regulation.
No, I wouldn't say you can condition anything based upon that.
Okay. All right.
So you would be using the business zone site plan requirements.
This
So it
is
doesn't
section-
speak to
section four-
textures.
section
Only in
four.
West Street Business Zone and the MUT can you dictate textures and materials.
Well, and the reason I ask, because 8.02.2 speaks about in harmony and character with the surrounding area.
Right, but we're not.
That's why I'm
we're
wondering
not
if there's
in
an opening
that
there, or
section.
is that not open?
No, we're not in the special permit aspect, we're just in the site plan
Okay.
aspect.
All right. Thank you. Does that help?
Yeah.
Maybe not the answer you wanted, but
No,
does it help?
I like clarification.
Yeah.
That's why we have lawyers and people smarter than us over here.
In my case, I didn't say much,
Well,
but
would be,
yeah.
it absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm inclined, so I guess I would ask the person with the motion, Vice Chair, regarding sidewalk in that area. Is that something that we can stipulate in that particular section? Because, I mean, you made a motion to approve.
I'd be willing to change, to amend my motion to approve or to recommend or to require sidewalks in that particular area.
So is,
That's three different things, Bob.
No, I know.
yeah, so is that something we could stipulate?
Stipulate that they are required in that area.
So is that something we could do?
I want to go back to your point about, there's a difference between stipulating something and reviewing something. So you're correct in that your review of it has to take into account whether it's in harmony, but it's tough to stipulate specific standards. So as a general rule, as a site plan, you look at the overall neighborhood, if you will. And we can't use the word characteristics anymore, but the general character of the area.
Okay, we're on a sidewalk now, Dave.
Okay. No,
About
but that's
whether-
to
about whether-
clarify, I wanted to
That one.
clarify that.
Okay.
So someone didn't go back and research it and say you were wrong.
Okay, okay.
Okay?
I trust you, man.
Okay. Right, so interior sidewalks.
Yeah.
Right?
Can that be a stipulation? So if we see this and there's a particular section which gives me in particular, Ajna, that,
So this area right here,
Right, where that
Right?
little drop
yeah,
off is.
there.
that they include a sidewalk as part of that site plan, is that something that we're allowed to?
Now, are we talking around, along the retaining wall, or are we
No,
talking
I don't
along the
care.
building side?
Building
I
side,
think we
right.
leave it to the engineer
Yeah.
to decide how to
Yeah.
do that,
Right.
right?
Because it only goes halfway.
Is that in our preview to stipulate that a sidewalk be constructed between parking lot on the east side and the south side?
See, stipulations are difficult on site plans, because it's not a special permit. I would say that I would find it hard to imagine that they wouldn't agree to do that, and that there's likely space for it, but there are certain standards for the width of walks, so we'd have to make sure it worked, right? It has to be at least 4 feet.
Yeah.
For ADA compliance.
Yeah.
So to say a walkway, if someone trips on a 3.5-foot walkway, because that's all that fits, then it's
Yep.
kind of a problem. So you could do a no access by blocking each side, so
Yep.
people don't go through there. That may be more appropriate, so they don't try and walk across there and build something.
Okay,
Again, same with the island, just, you have to look at different aspects of how to prevent it as opposed to try and make it happen.
yeah.
So I think that there are 2 access points on either side, which kind of precludes the reason to walk across that.
There's access point only on one side, not the other.
So they spoke to some type of.
Access point
here,
there,
right?
but not there. That's where the children's thing is.
Yeah, so I don't,
So if you're walking from that parking
but I don't know
lot,
if you can even walk through there.
yeah, well, sure you could, because if you're walking, my concern is, if you're walking from that parking lot
You mean
across
around
the
this
way, you have nowhere to walk except in the street.
Well, the entrance is there.
Yeah, but you want to, you going from one parking lot to the other. That's my concern.
Yeah.
So there's no walkway to getting from the south parking lot to the east parking lot?
Again, that's, it's, that would be a incredible coincidence to have 2 wide cars and someone walking along that area at the same time, I would say, as a general rule. Plus, there's a 3-foot shelf there on the other side of the wall there, that you could walk on.
Okay, so rather than stipulate, would it be appropriate to recommend that a sidewalk or walkway be constructed between the 2 parking lots?
We don't know if it can physically be done without completely changing the design. They're right up against the setback in the front. So they either have to take away from a portion of the building, which would totally change the design, or move the wall back, which would change the height of the wall, which would, again, run into cost and more engineering for it, so. It's not just an easy yes or no,
Yeah.
For us, it's tough.
Well, it's a recommendation too, which means they could take it or not take it,
Well,
right? The
again,
building committee could
yeah,
take it or not
true,
take it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that we have any other option there.
Gotcha, okay.
Is that everyone else's read? That's what I'm hearing. Frustrating, but it's what I'm hearing, so.
We do like parking, we do like sidewalks.
So would it be administratively, I know we have a motion on the floor, better to table and have applicant hearing this conversation come back with it's feasible, it's not feasible?
Completely up to you.
Well, they can't because the public hearing's closed.
Because the public hearing's closed. You answered my question.
And in
Never mind.
terms of their
Yep.
construction
Yep.
schedule, I heard June of this
Yeah,
year.
you never
And that
mind.
means that they need to get approval
Yeah,
relatively
Gotcha.
soon.
okay. You answered my question, public hearing's closed. Gotcha, okay.
You could recommend that they, work with staff to try and meet your
To consider that.
goals, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Bob Solka, maker of the motion, where are we on that? You want to make a recommendation that they consider putting a sidewalk between those two parking lots? Or do you want to just leave it to them picking up this conversation we're
I
having
think
right
just
now?
let them pick up this conversation. I think they're
Okay.
hearing enough.
We either make or the motion, you got the power, brother, so you decide. So, all right, so we have a motion, we have a second of the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please, Dave?
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Caird,
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello,
Yes.
Commissioner Coles,
No.
Commissioner Santiago,
No.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Reluctant, yes, but nonetheless, motion passes 5-2. Item 9B, we're all set there, right?
Okay. Do we have 2 noes? I thought we only-
Yep.
We did, it was 5-2. Item 9B, Jeremy Berube, home occupation application for retail sales of firearms and other items allowed per FFL 7, weekend appointment only sales, property located at 338 Town Line Road, zoned in R40, HO 86.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve 8086 with the stipulations that it's appointment sales only, no signage proposed, and the applicant is indicating weekend sales only.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
Commissioner Coles with a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can you call the roll, please, Dave?
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Caird,
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello,
Yes.
Commissioner Coles,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammersley.
Hammers is a yes, motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, lots of luck. Item 9C, Southington Sparrow LLC, site plan modification application for relocation of proposed driveway and removal of easement in favor of a property to the south, property located at 1908 West Street, zoned in an I-1, SPR 1855.1.
Mr. Chairman,
Bovino.
Commission members, Seth Bovino, planner of Cratchit Johnson Associates, represent the applicant. Originally, the application was to remove an easement that was proposed between the two properties and also ask for your approval on the relocation of the driveway. The driveway was relocated about 60 foot south from the previous driveway, recommended by DOT. Since then, an agreement was reached between the two property owners. The easement is in place. Legal documents were provided to the town attorney, I believe, and I understand that they're in agreement. So we don't need you to consider the removal of that easement. The only thing you're considering is the relocation of that driveway, which was requested by DOT. Those are the only changes.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I did review the easement. Just for the public, I do have a minor comment and change that I'm going to be suggesting, so I just want that to be clear to
Okay.
everybody.
It
Nothing
was
for you
going to be one of
nothing for
my.
you to worry about this time.
It's going to be one of my questions, actually, so, but, Sev, so where was the driveway before and where is it now?
The driveway was at the north end of the property,
Yep,
and now it's moved south about 60 feet. And the drawing you have that we submitted shows that driveway. It's pretty much centered on the property.
yep. Okay,
It works even better in terms of functionality coming in,
okay,
instead of coming in on one end and try to travel through the entire parking lot.
all right.
Oh, okay. Actually, it does, doesn't it?
Any questions from members of the commission? See none? Sev, anything else?
That's it.
No. So my question was on whether the easement was to the town's satisfaction, and Attorney Rick Nolan, I think you talked to that.
I have no concerns. I have literally 2 words that I've requested be deleted out of it, and we'll be okay.
So if we were to stipulate that it be done to your satisfaction, that's
Yep.
adequate?
Please.
Okay. All right. So, do we have a motion here?
I'll make a motion to approve
Okay,
to the satisfaction of staff verbiage
okay. Is that,
on
is that,
easement.
okay. Good job.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Salker with a second. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Caird,
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello,
Yes.
Commissioner Cole,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammerson.
Hammers is a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 9D, I'm going to ask a table on that. We have some outstanding comments that have not been answered by the applicant to town staff. So could we get a motion to table item 9D?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we table SPR 1865.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Items tabled. 9E, Tilcon, Connecticut, Inc., renewal of previous earth excavation approval, property located at West Queen Street and Welch Road, EE 2418. Jim, is this, you want to talk about this at all?
I don't know if Mr.
Mr. Chairman, this is
just wants to
Seth
comment.
Bovino
Right.
again. This is a excavation permit renewal that happens every 2 years. Nothing has changed on this property. Nothing has happened, actually. Not a yard of material was taken out because of COVID and other reasons. So we ask for your reapproval of this, an extension of the permit another 2 years.
Okay. Any discussion? Do we have a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve EE 2024.18.
We have a motion, a second?
Second?
Excuse me, I'd just like to, Mr. Chairman, just a continuation of the bond for an additional 2 years.
So is that, should that be part of the motion then?
Yeah, I'd like to make that
Okay.
stipulation.
So
So-
move to the motion.
So we have the motion maker has approved that stipulation or revision?
Yes.
Jen, you're good? Okay, so both have approved that? Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Caird,
Yes.
Commissioner Coviello,
Yes.
Commissioner Cole,
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago,
Yes.
Vice Chair Salka,
Yes.
and Chair Hammerson.
Hammers is a yes, 7-0, motion passes. Thank you. Item 9F, I'm going to ask for a table on this one as well. There's several outstanding comments from town staff that have yet to be answered. Can we get a motion to table?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we table SPR 1866.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10, administrative items. Dave, anything?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Didn't mean to exclude Jim or Alex. Anything? We good? No administrative items? Any receipt? Looks like we're pretty empty on the receipt of new applications, right?
Correct.
That's not necessarily good. Things are slowing down, but they are what they are. So, and I'll just close before I close. I've spoken to each of you. I'm not going to go into detail in public here, but I look forward to getting back here quickly and soon. And I appreciate all your support and help and advice. So do good. Solka's in charge for a little bit. I'm sure he'll do a great job like he always does. And I wish you all well. And with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion is second. All those in favor?